Dr. Brackett will be joining us shortly. Kendra will not be with us tonight. She sends her regrets. She is very sad to miss the meeting, but she is very sick. Some stomach problems tonight. So we will continue without her.
I was here in person.
And I will turn it over to you, Mary.
Okay. Thank you again, and thanks to all the members of the leadership team for being here this evening and for our other attendees. Just going to start today with tonight is really about presenting the school building budgets. So we have presented all the other cost centers, and the schools are not a cost center. Their budgets belong in a couple places. The regular day as well as special education, but the budget at the building level is one of the most important things that we can present to you to understand how resources are allocated at specific buildings. So the principals are all here, and they're supported by the curriculum coordinators, and the budget process for buildings is very collaborative. Has been this year, where curriculum coordinators and principals have worked together to make sure that their buildings are adequately resourced and that everybody understands what's being requested for the FY18 budget. So before we jump into the individual buildings, though, we just wanted to updated slide that's not included. Just a minute. So, do you all have a slide?
Yeah.
That says historical facts, staff and principal. Excuse me while I try to get the most up-to-date presentation. Oh, just in time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, you can sit up.
Is that slide hiding?
No, I actually, I think
Yeah, that's
that
fine.
there's an issue because that I just recently changed the computers. And I thought it was backed up to the.
Is it? You're getting along?
So I just emailed it to myself.
Set up for the set of those slides. The slides. Yeah.
You want me to sit there?
No, I would like you to,
You want this?
I need a set, yeah. Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't,
Yeah, we'll leave it, hey, Judge, leave the communication.
All right.
Excuse me.
Well, I appreciate the little pause there.
So it's gonna be a little tricky because I'm gonna have to actually go through the slides a little bit differently.
Excuse me, last time.
Yes, I,
No, I think we're good. I think we'll be good. In the meantime, I may switch over, I intend to do this PDF version. Yeah.
Yeah, do half of it.
The other,
It's down the middle, or it's always better.
the other way, the way that I had it originally, yeah, I think that's probably, yeah, good, so. So you have these slides in front of you, I'm not sure if you can see this, how well you can see this, but one of the things that we added to the presentation that we didn't have in the prior presentation was historical staffing trends. And so through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and their analytical tool that we all have access to called Edwin, we report to the state every year, 3 times a year, we report on all of our personnel information, and they retain that information. So we have a good historical database of positions by category. And so in this slide, you can kind of see the trends that have happened in our personnel. And you can see, for example, that over the past 9 years, and this goes through 15-16, not 16-17, but in the past 9 years, we have added 96.7 FTEs. More than half of those positions have come from the paraprofessional classification. 51.5 is the increase in FTEs for paraprofessional. That's followed by instructional staff, 19.1 FTEs, and then special education related staff, 17.1. So this helps you understand exactly what the growth in staffing has been over the past 9 years. And with that, do you want to jump in with?
yeah, thanks. So tonight, you're going to hear from the principals as they talk about their budgets that have been done in collaboration with the coordinators. There are a number of coordinators here who will also be available for questioning and presentations. We'll start with the secondary level. I think we'll start with chemo first. Just in terms of, at the beginning of each section, we'll talk a little bit about the staffing. And what we've done in terms of staffing is that we have met with the principal at each school to review, or collectively with the elementaries, to review what our enrollment projections are for next year. The enrollment we're using is Decision Insight, and they have been fairly accurate. One of the things, they've been less accurate at the kindergarten level, more accurate at 1 through 12. They do take into consideration, we looked at this a couple of meetings ago, they do take into consideration the development that's going on in town. We feel like that's a fairly accurate representation of what we can look for when the doors open in September. However, as soon as we say that, you realize that Brackett's Law will come into play, and Brackett's Law says that if we have any grade level that is at the edge of either needing one more staff or or not, we will get every move-in will go into that grade level at that school. So, but right now, what we believe is that the staffing for the middle school and high school is going to vary, and you will see a little bit about that. But it's because some of our enrollment is moving from the middle school to the high school because this year's 8th grade class has 205. We are projecting that will show up as a 9th grade class at 195. Although, full disclosure, we're constantly monitoring that in terms of the number of students who may be seeking to go to private school and to Minuteman. And there is some belief that number might be higher this coming year than what we've experienced in the past. So to the effect that happens, that enrollment of 195 in the 9th grade may be a little bit overstated. So we'll monitor that. We'll see where we end up with that. But in terms of staffing, those were the numbers that we used to base our staffing levels at both middle school and the high school. Trying to keep at the middle school the same number of clusters that we currently have in place, although there'll be some changes in other areas within the staffing structure. So with that, we've asked the principals to talk about their program, talk about budget, but much like the other night, I think you're going to probably hear more from the principals about what they've accomplished and where they're going, as well as how the budget is going to influence them getting there. So I said middle school, but I think we're going to start with the high school. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. So, Shirley.
So I'm going to take a step back in time prior to that slide to start off and kind of tell you how we got there before we got there. So the role of education has changed quite a bit because the world has changed quite a bit. We're no longer preparing kids to do things that have already been done. We're preparing kids to do things that have never been done. Companies that haven't been created, products that we don't have yet, innovations that aren't there. So we have, at the high school level, the advantage of K-8 excellent educators that lay the really good groundwork for all of those skills. But once they get to the high school, that's our last shot at it before they leave our system and then move on to career and college. And we need to help them to be ready for that. So we have a goal of preparing them for those unknowns, giving them the skill set, but giving them the experiences along the way to put their knowledge together in different ways than they've done before, to create new ideas out of pieces of old ideas, to work together as teams, all of the 21st century learning things that are going to be necessary to exist in a world that will be different from what it is while they're at school. So that's kind of our overarching goal as to what we're doing at the high school. And besides that, I'd say the number one thing we have to work with them on is persistence. When something is hard, something seems unsolvable, something seems like there's only two ways to do it, it's either this way or that, and neither one works, to persist, to work together, to talk, to collaborate with their fellow students, to learn how to do those things in a different way, and to be open to hearing that there are different ways. So it's kind of an exciting time and a challenging time all at once. So in the last recent years, we've done a number of things to work toward that goal. And we've done some things just to be in compliance with new regulations and laws. So we realigned and updated all of our curriculum to match the Common Core. And some key elements of that were we had a 3-year math requirement, now it's 4. And we had a 3-year PE program, and now that is also 4. So those are things that we've added to our curriculum without adding any hours to our day, and have managed to work in high school schedules are very complicated. We've managed to fit that all in. It has created other obstacles along the way, but we're using our 21st century skills to solve those too. Also, within the schedule, we carved out a common planning period for most departments within the school day. They're not all free that same period every day because of duties and things such as that, but we try to make sure that we carve out at least one day in the 7-day cycle where none of them have a duty on that period that they're free. So they have the opportunity for additional collaboration inside the school day. So we managed to accomplish that in the last few years as well. We have an advisory program that initially started for freshmen. We've since expanded it to sophomores, and then we piloted it with juniors, and 85% of them opted in. So then we just do a standard freshman, sophomore, junior advisory. Many of our seniors act as peer leaders in those advisories. So people are very involved in the advisories. It's a major focus. And we have a curriculum for it, and I just want to give you the highlights. For freshman curriculum, we focus on the transition to high school. It's called A Place to Belong. We talk about our core values, which have the acronym REACH, which is respect, empower, achieve, create, and honor. So we introduce them to those. We talk about study habits, about managing conflict, decision-making, and we help them to make that transition from a different educational environment to this one, where our goal between 9th grade and 12th grade is to prepare them to own their own learning, to take charge of and be responsible for what they're doing, and have a little bit less hand-holding every year, because once they're out of here, that's the last time they get that kind of helpful treatment. So we try to help them transition. It takes the 4 years for most people. The sophomore curriculum is getting reacquainted, where they do a deeper exploration of the core values. They learn about goal setting, and they do some practice with that, managing stress, and we have a whole section on bullying, cyberbullying, and all that that takes place largely in sophomore curriculum. In the junior curriculum, it's reaching beyond, and now we're starting to talk about life after high school, and there's college fairs, there's road trips. We introduce them to GPA and the understanding of where that gets used, how that gets calculated. They do resume building in the Naviance program, and they do college and career planning, and there's a whole unit on mindfulness too, on how to be in the moment, take a step out of all the chaos of this world, and just be in the moment and kind of own your own internal being. Other uses that we do for advisory is, that's always where we would distribute report cards, if there was a schedule update, we would use that opportunity. It's one of the big advantages of advisory is it's one of those places where they have that one person, one more adult in the building that they can relate to in a small group setting. There's like 12 normally in an advisory. If we, like when we do the YRBS, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, we'll do it through advisory. It's easier to manage in that size of a group. If we have an assembly or an event that happens, if we're going to debrief, we tend to give the talking points to the advisors and give them some guidance about that so that that can all take place in a smaller group.
Did you say only that there were 85% of kids are in it, or that was just when it started?
All freshmen, all sophomores, and when we piloted juniors, 85% opted in. So then we
Okay.
just do all juniors
So you
now.
do all juniors?
And then
Okay.
the number of seniors who choose to be peer leaders in the groups.
Okay.
So it's more than 85% of the school, I would say. We have worked on enriching options and modifying the scheduling process so that we have fewer study halls. So that students actually are using their skills, having opportunities to explore something that's in their interest area, double a science if they want to move ahead, or a math or an English. And as I said, to reduce the number of study halls. So that was a goal we had, and that's something we've accomplished through the scheduling process also. We focused some endowment funds that we had that were not targeted to create the Wayshack Fab Lab, which has been a fabulous addition to the school and is still becoming more and more something that we use. We have in it right now 3 3D printers, 2 vinyl cutters, 1 small, 1 large, a laser cutter that can either score or it can cut, a CNC router, which is huge. It's in the wood shop, but you can program it from a computer in the Fab Lab. 2 sewing machines, little bits, which are electronic magnet, little pieces that you can program and you can work on coding with. Through the Fab Lab, we have open Fab Lab time. There's always kids there during their studies, lunch, summer after school. We have clubs that meet there. We have collaborations with core classes, and any of the coordinators can probably give you some specific examples of when a class of theirs went there and they did a project that was related to their curriculum. And one of my favorite things in the Fab Lab is there's a whole shelf called the Museum of Mistakes, because we celebrate those, because we learn from those. And that goes into that whole persistence thing and learning how to make something more of what you learn by doing. So that Fab Lab has turned out to be a fabulous thing. You can thank Toni Carlson for the brainchild of it. I went to her with, what should we do with this money? It's an important amount. I'd like to do something significant and something technology, and that was all the guidance I gave her. So, and this is what we came up with, and she did a great job, and it's still growing. In the last few years, we've added or revamped a number of advanced placement courses. We've added advanced placement computer science. We added advanced placement Italian. We reinstituted advanced placement Spanish, which had been on the shelf for a couple of years. We moved from advanced placement calculus BC to advanced placement calculus AB for student accessibility. And if you need more details about that, Dan's your man back there. We added AP Physics C, which I believe is mechanics. And the AP Physics B curriculum was rewritten by College Board. I think it was difficult for students to access. It was split into two pieces. And we have adopted AP Physics 1. We don't have enough students to access AP Physics 2, but that's like the first half of that course. So those have been added through the last few years as well. Other new courses that we added or revamped, Project Lead the Way. We started in 2015-16, and our first course was the first one of the introductory courses, which was Intro to Engineering Design. That first year, we did not limit it to particular grades. We just wanted to populate it. So we ended up running 3 sections of it, I believe, and we had all grades in it. So some seniors graduated who would never have the opportunity to take the next level course, but many of the underclassmen then did go on to take others. In English Language Arts, we unleveled English 9 with the goal of maintaining the rigor and structure while providing focused transition to the high school, reading and writing expectations. That's sometimes a difficult transition when you move from probably from 5 to 6, although I'm not as familiar, but definitely from 8 to 9. The expectations at the high school are a little bit different, and we have to grow those over the 4 years as well. So that's an unleveled one, and then they can choose levels beyond that or earn their way into the upper levels beyond that. Revamped English 12. This was very responsive to actual student performance, so that the bulk of the students in English 12 will take 2 semester courses. And the first one is Research in the Real World, and they run that as a workshop type model, and during that part, they will create their student thesis paper, their senior thesis paper. I know that we had trouble getting them to their deadlines, even though they were very well mapped out, the milestones were all there, the benchmarks were there, when they could have the whole year. And then it's May 25th, and graduation is June 2nd, and that senior thesis paper is holding them back. So this actually really helps that, because it's now due by the end of the first semester. And then they can specialize in an area of interest for their second semester. And the choices that we have right now are creative writing, comedy and literature, film and media, sports and literature, science fiction, utopias and dystopias, and war stories. So I think most of those ran this time, and it runs based on student choice, how those enrollments go. In the sciences, some of the things we did to reach our goals of reaching all students is we adapted science classes to meet student needs while still maintaining the highest challenge that they can do. So there were 2 classes in particular that I'm thinking of we did that with. Conceptual physics was created for a rigorous physics curriculum that pays attention to the theory and the philosophies for students who might struggle a little bit more with the math. And then this past year, we added physics with algebra, which was created sort of for a student who actually does very well at math, not quite ready for the rigor of the honors physics class. So that was kind of targeting specific populations who were struggling in the couple of offerings we had before, and the science department responded to that by coming up with more targeted courses for them. Also in science, we added some enriching and challenging electives. I think they both run as semester electives. One is biotechnology and genetic engineering, which they enjoy a lot, and the other is complexity, which is all about systems and systems behaviors. In educational technology and library, we added design thinking as a Fab Lab semester course, and that one is growing, and we've used that design process in a number of different areas since then. And added a student help desk as a semester ed tech course, where the students work with Tony actually on developing a website for tools for teachers and other students, and they act as a call desk as well to go out and help within the building. In phys ed, we added a reach out PE. I talked about this at Program of Studies nights, which brings together typically developing peers with disabled peers in a collaborative PE class environment. That has gone very, very well. So that was piloted, and now it's been added to our Program of Studies. We also added dance and rhythmic activities, so it's an interest choice for students in their PE. And we piloted this year a female empowerment class as a targeted interest choice PE class, and that will be in the Program of Studies for next year. In world languages, we continue to add levels of Arabic as students progress through the curriculum. You know, last year, or this existing year, we added Arabic for both honors and level 1. And we moved to a proficiency-based model where 90% of instruction takes place in the target language. And that was a little bit different strategy than had been used before. So it's fun, you walk down the hall, and I didn't take any of those languages, so I don't understand a darn thing that's going on in any of those classes. But they're clearly all speaking in the target language. Other strategies that we employed is, there's a number of co-taught classes that we have done that have worked out very well. Not all of them are co-taught math, special ed and something. Some of them are ELL and something. So we have a transitional algebra class that's co-taught by a math teacher and an ELL teacher, very successful. A co-taught transitional biology, again a biology teacher and an ELL teacher. We have a transitional English class that's taught by a dual licensed teacher, ELL and ELA. We have MCAS prep in English, math, and biology, and we're going to add it in physics as well. We have a co-taught chemistry class that is chemistry and a special educator. That's new this year. And a co-taught English class that's an English educator and a special educator together. So we found that that model is working out pretty well in a number of different ways, and that's something we're talking about growing, and I'll talk about that later. So for success indicators on our goals and all of these things that we tried, the number of study halls are significantly reduced, and students are engaged in meaningful learning for larger portions of the school day. In general, underclassmen are fully scheduled, and upperclassmen have a maximum of 1 study hall. So a lot better dynamics, keeps the momentum going through the day. There's not the downtime, so you have to transition back up to a learning experience. Just kind of keeps going. And 2 big things, I think, is we were named in a couple of different studies as one of the best high schools. So we made U.S. News and World Reports last year as one of the nation's and the Commonwealth's best public high schools, and they all use different ranking criteria, but they had ranked us as 68th in the state by what their criteria was. And that's a big deal, I think. I bought the plaque, we put it up on our television, I put it in our newsletter. And this past year also, Boston Magazine included us among the top public high schools in the Boston area for 2016. I think that's very significant. We never made any of these lists before. So I know that there are still a lot of schools ahead of us on these lists, but we didn't used to make them. So we've made some good headway here. Another indicator that we might want to look at are our AP scores last year. 21% of our students scored 5s, 27% scored 4s, 31% scored 3s, 14% 2s, and 6% 1s. So we administered 208 exams, 167 exams scored 3 or better, which is a little over 80%. 3 or better is generally what they'll use for either advanced placement or college credit. But regardless of whether they actually get that credit, whether that institution accepts it, or if they scored a 2, the experience of a college level course in high school is huge in terms of helping students to prepare. Our MCAS scores are above state averages in all 3 subject matters. So I think the things that we're doing are working, and I think that people outside of us and the indicators that they're using to measure schools demonstrate that. It's not just the principal who loves this high school saying those things. These are outside people looking at it, saying that these are the things that are making a difference here. So happy about that. So now I'm on this slide. So our most recent accomplishments is we are growing Project Lead the Way. We are in year 2, and we added the second introductory course. There's a prescribed method of rolling it out. So we added the second introductory course, which is Principles of Engineering, and then we also added one upper level course, which is Digital Electronics. And I think Digital Electronics was a little bit small, so we did a co-taught model to make sure that we can kind of move our way through as the program grows. That included a significant investment in a laptop cart with the high-end programs that you need to run engineering programs. We rounded out our language-based staffing. We had always, well, not always, but for a while, we've had a special educator specializing in language-based disabilities in English, in math, and in social studies, but we didn't have one in the sciences. So this year we did add that, and that is going very well as well. We increased our guidance department staffing by a little bit, by half of an FTE. It will help for the guidance counselors to have more face-to-face time with individual students. It will also help them to have a little bit more time for underclass programming, where so much of their programming takes so much time with the upperclassmen. This will give them a little bit of breathing room to get some more programming for the underclassmen, and they are actually doing that. We also updated a number of textbooks. It had been probably a decade since we updated any of them. So last year we had chemistry, psychology, civics, statistics, pre-calculus, geometry, and algebra textbooks all updated. So that was a big boom to the resources that we were able to use. And that was through the budget and the one-time money process. We also are in phase 1 of our one-to-one Chromebook rollout, which was for 9th and 10th grade. We have very avid users of Google Classroom. It gives students and parents more access to what's going on. It's a communication vehicle. We have many teachers who are very excited about it, and are inside instructors of other people and their own help desk as to what we do. So that is going very, very well. That was a very successful program. And we increased our adjustment counseling staff by a portion of an FTE, responding to the increased mental health and social emotional needs that we have in the building. So moving on to what we're looking for in next year is our goals that are supported by the budget at this point, is adding some staffing to implement co-teaching in each of the core areas to support and enhance the inclusion model. We had specifically targeted certain areas that were co-taught before, but this would have at least one co-teaching pair. We have one co-teaching pair in English, but we don't have one in history, science, or math yet in the inclusion rooms. We are supporting those right now with paraprofessionals. But this, I think, will be an enhancement to that, having 2 licensed professionals in the classroom, each with their own area of specialty, working together. We're going to continue the planned rollout of Project Lead the Way, and that would mean adding the capstone course, which is Engineering Design and Development. Engineering Design and Development is the one that can, once they've gone through those, they can now be eligible to earn college credits, and there are a number of higher education institutions that will allow that, that Project Lead the Way has articulation agreements with. The budget should allow us to implement phase 2 of the one-to-one Chromebook rollout, which will be great. 11th grade next year, or the 10th graders this year that are already married to that whole process. So it's really adding it for the 12th graders. The 9th graders coming up already use them at the middle school, so I think it's a perfect way to finish up that rollout and to continue our work together in Google Classroom and all of the tools that we have available through that. The budget would also provide for school-based PD, so clearly there would be co-teaching PD included in that, instructional technology PD, and other things as they come up specific to the high school. The proposed FY18 budget also provides for one-to-one mentoring of new teachers. I've been a new teacher. It's very hard to be a new teacher. It's really good to have someone to help you through that process. We have right now mentors 1 on 3, 4, 5, whatever. It's a big span. But to have one-to-one mentoring is huge in getting people off the ground in a career that they love but is overwhelming the day you walk in the door. The budget also supports increasing the dean of students to 220 days. He has taken over a good chunk of the scheduling. He already probably works 220 days and isn't paid for it. So I think it's just, that's like a fairness issue to me. It will also allow us to continue to enhance and expand wireless access, which will be very important with all of those extra Chromebooks in the building. We'll continue our textbook updates, this time for physics, biology, AP biology, US history, level 1 and honors. And one thing that looks like a district ad that's going to make a huge difference to the high school is that 1.0 music teacher that's in the budget to be added. 0.4 of that helps us at the high school, and there's a couple of things that will do for us. High school scheduling is very complicated. One of the hardest things you can do is say that no matter what happens, this class has to meet this certain period, or is only going to meet one. A singleton is hard, but the minute you say it has to only meet that certain period, it's like 5 times as hard to make sure that everyone who wants it can get it. And we are in that position right now because the teacher travels. So band can only be period 5. That's it, end of discussion. If something else is period 5 and you want that too, you're gonna have to make a choice. And actually, Power School is pretty powerful in terms of responding to student requests when it places courses. The scheduler doesn't place courses, Power School's scheduler places courses, and it responds to the requests. It tries to minimize the conflicts for students. It's not about making it the way that teachers would prefer to have this day or this period or whatever. It's all about what student requests are, but in spite of that, you tie a class to a period, and it's really hard for everybody to get in. So I won't have to do that with the teacher at the school more often. The other real value of that to me is that we can now offer some entry-level music courses, which right now, if you come to the high school, you can take chorus as entry-level, but you can't take band or orchestra as an entry-level course. So you really don't have the full range of options that you might otherwise have, and there are some new courses that will be offered for that.
So Shirley, can I ask, does this solve the problem of, we heard at the beginning of the year, I think it was this year, where the, student with a high advanced French class maybe, or some language class, advanced language class, also had been in band for maybe 10 years or something, but couldn't do both?
It will make it better. I hope it will solve it 100%. We actually had very few, but I do know that one did happen, and that student did make a choice to take level 1 of the language as opposed to the honors to remain in band. But that was the biggest challenge. We go through all of those ones that are tied to a period and try really hard to move those around by hand.
Yeah.
And we do everything we can, and that one we couldn't fix without making 5 others worse.
Right.
So it should help. I can't guarantee it's gonna be perfect, because
Yeah.
we're still a small high school, but
Yeah.
it should help. I'm done. I don't know if any of the coordinators, you had any other questions of them about specifics, but
I'd love your long list. That's an exciting list of accomplishments and changes and improvements.
yeah, it was fun to put it together too.
Can I just add one thing? Shirley and I have been talking over the last couple weeks about the high school, and one of the things that I pointed out is that I think it's a well-kept secret. I think there's a lot of good things happening at the high school. I think the outcomes are good. Could it be better? Absolutely. I don't know a school in this world that couldn't be better. But I think as we look at it and think about it and hear the kinds of things, maybe we need to just do a better job of marketing it, because the kids are doing some incredible things. We saw it, we see it in sports, we see it on the stage, we see it in the band rooms, and we see it in the classrooms. And that AP figure, the AP stat that Shirley mentioned tonight says a lot about, not only are we moving kids to that next level, but we're moving them at a very high level. So 80% of kids getting a 3 or above in AP is something that I don't know who knows about it, but we're going to talk about that because there are some good things happening at that at the high school, and we'll keep building on it. But it's something that we should not take for granted.
Yeah, and I think we have to not keep this secret, because, when you talk about the enrollment, moving from the middle school to the high school, I have a 8th grader, rising 9th grader, and I know of a number of kids that are going private because our secret is being kept too closely. And what you're talking about, I'd love for more families to know that, so we're keeping these, a lot of these strong peers in district with us and continuing.
Yep.
I also want to add, as we start to try to explain to people the physical needs of the building, I think it's important to tell them how much we're doing really well, even with what we've got, and then to show them what more we could do if we had this better building, because I think people need to understand we're already doing a really good job. And look what we could do if we had this new building. I think we have to constantly be telling people, because if you don't have a kid in the schools, generally you're remembering things from the past when maybe it wasn't as good as it is now.
Great. Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome. You got it?
Your goals. All right. Good evening. Before I get into these slides, I think there's two things that I want to emphasize. One, Dr. Brackett just mentioned, is our school enrollment is going down next year. We have a big 8th grade class that's moving to 9th grade, and we have sort of an extra small 7th grade class that is going to move to 8th grade. Our next year's 6th and 7th grade classes are sort of right on target as far as their size is concerned. So it's kind of we're going down about 25 students, and then we're going to go right back up 25 students the following year according to the projections.
Enjoy next year.
Huh?
I said enjoy next year.
Well, part of it is that because our enrollment is going down, is we're going to lose some staff. Because it's only fair. High school is gaining some people, and we're losing some people, so the high school will be gaining some staff, and we won't. So most of what I'm going to be presenting is really with the understanding that we are going to be losing some staff, and I'm not asking for extra staff. However, there's an opportunity here too. When you have to change staff, whether you're gaining or losing, what you can do is you can sort of reproportionalize the staff. And one thing that we are doing at the middle school is we're going to be emphasizing in retaining our professional staff and changing the ratio between our professional staff and our paraprofessional staff so that there's more professional staff. And so there would be more classes that would be co-taught with 2 professionals instead of a professional and a paraprofessional. And so that's something that was and that leads me to my second point. What I'm going to say here, if you were here on Monday and you heard Teresa's and Kathy's really good presentations about teaching and learning and curriculum and professional development on Teresa's on the district level, and then Kathy's presentation on special education especially, hopefully you can see these plans in action in this particular school. And so think about what Teresa and Kathy said while I'm presenting as well, because I think you can make some connections. I think both the goals, the district goals, Teresa's goals and Kathy's goals, and they're all our goals. I mean, it was collaboratively done, but presented by Teresa's and Kathy. they're very important for the district, and at the middle school, we want to be sort of, leading the way, and seeing how we can go in these goals. And so that's something that I just want to do that there. And I'm thinking, probably the best way, there's a long list of middle school accomplishments, but I think everyone has a handout. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the next slide, if that is, which is sort of the goal support of the budget. And I'm going to talk to each of these 8 points, but I'm going to be sort of starting with the history, and then moving forward that way. So these are sort of themes, improvement themes of the middle school right now, and I'll explain how the budget has supported them in the past, and then how next year's budget will support them. And so you can sort of, when you're looking at your paper, I think we should probably just keep this slide up, but with your paper, you can sort of flip back and forth and sort of say, because I'm going to be flipping back and forth with slides. So one big goal that Kathy presented on Monday is inclusion and co-teaching. We have developed in the past a very comprehensive special education program. It has a lot of different, it has a lot of programming for kids with all different abilities. We have connections, we have language-based, we have the integrated support program, inclusion, we have a number of programs. But we have found with our data, both at the state level with Tom Hare's study and at our school level, that we might not be doing kids a favor by partially including them. It seems, though, that our partially included students, in whatever program that they're in, don't seem to have as much growth as our fully included students in our general education population. So that's a problem, and it's a great, I'm glad, that data sort of exposed that issue. And so having what we are able to do with this budget is that with this emphasis on professional staffing, we can give more co-taught inclusion opportunities for every student in whatever program that they're in. It's going to take a little while. There are some kids' IEPs that have substantially separate as their de facto, so we're going to have lots of team meetings but there will always be an opportunity, the way this works, for every student, regardless of what cluster they're in, to be in an included class. And so we can say to a student, hey, let's try out inclusion science and see how it works. And not only that, but often that student's special education teacher would be the co-taught, the teacher who's co-teaching in that particular class, who knows that student very well. So what we're trying to do is promote opportunities so that students and their parents can see that inclusion might work for their students and may move over. And the reason we can do that is I can have a special education teacher in every cluster responsible for both the inclusion students and the language-based learners. And that's, so no matter what cluster a student it is, and that's it. And that, I'm thrilled about that as far as the way the budget works.
I just wanted to interject one
Yeah.
thing, so I thank you for that, I realized after Monday night that there were some parents of students who are substantially separate in our programs that were concerned, and I think that in my presentation and in yours tonight, when we're talking about inclusion, our programs aren't going away. We're still
Right.
maintaining all of our programming for students who are in those substantially separate classrooms. Connections will exist, learning support will exist, LB will exist, ISP will exist for those students that have those needs. So IEPs drive those will be intact as is with no services reduced. So thank you.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. But now, more options even within that program, whether substantially separate might be best or inclusion might be best. And we were a little hamstrung without that professional staffing before. So that's something that was really good. One thing that was emphasized also, what Teresa emphasized 2 days ago, was literacy. And we've done a lot of work on literacy. And really, we've followed the path as the literacy developed in the elementary schools. One thing about literacy that we changed this year, accomplishment this year, is that we really finally got to a data-based approach that I'm proud of. So every student, every reading student, and then I think by the end of the year, we'll have every student, even those students in foreign language, will have 4 assessments. And we will know exactly where their reading level is. And some of the assessments have to do with fluency, some of the assessments have to do with comprehension, some of the assessments have to do with phonics, so that we know if students have gaps, we know where to target them and how to do that.
You said by the end of the school year.
Right now, we have it for all reading students.
Okay.
We are going to take 2 of those assessments. We're not going to assess them with all 4 for the kids who are in foreign language right now, because we do believe that they are proficient readers. But I think just a little check, just to make sure that our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who are taking foreign language don't have any gaps as far as what their reading is there, and then maybe their English teachers can help. So those assessments are available for teachers to look at, and we still have some work to do to make the assessments more readable and understandable. These 4 assessments are the same 4 assessments that the elementary schools use, so it's nothing new. And so what we'll be able to do in years to come is to build up and see kids' reading progress all the way from K to 8 and perhaps even the high school. And that's something that I think is going to be really helpful for us as we try to improve literacy all throughout the district.
Okay, so can I just ask, that's the 4
Yes.
assessments that were on Monday night's presentation?
Yes.
And they're all normed for each grade level?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, so that's one piece of it. That's the assessment piece of it. But we have an instructional piece as well. What we've been doing this year is we've been really focusing, well, first of all, a lot of our teachers have taken the Sheltered English Immersion class, which is it's really literacy skills. And it's for English language learners, but any student, with these literacy skills is going to benefit from these. And so we're happy that we had that. So that's sort of the way past, because even by this year, most of our teachers have had those skills, and they're using those skills and those techniques and teaching methods in the classroom. What we decided to do is really emphasize 3 teaching methods, so that we have Watertown Middle School methods of teaching reading. One method is really, and really they're tried and true, they happen. One method is pre-reading, making sure that teachers have pre-reading activities at the right level and not too long. Sometimes pre-reading activities can be way too long or tell the students exactly what to read or what to know when they're reading, and that's not what makes it fun. The right kind of pre-reading activities, and really the major pre-reading activity that we're emphasizing is, what do I know already? What do I want to know? And then at the end of the reading, what have I learned? We are also emphasizing partnered reading as students are reading text in the classroom, where they're in partners and they're reading aloud to one another, and one student reads while the other student listens and then summarizes. And there's lots of different variations and combinations of partnered reading. There's 5 zillion flavors and colors of partnered reading, but that's generally what partnered reading is, and we find, and research says that is a very effective way of improving reading comprehension. And then finally, we have a 3-point play that our reading teachers have for our students, how they respond to reading, which means full, complete answers, and then really with a claim and the evidence and the inference. And that's something that we're going to be focusing on our writing as well. Our next step is to continue these reading strategies and then move these strategies, because they're very similar parallel strategies when we teach writing. And so writing will be our next area right there, and there's going to be some professional development money for that for us, and both at the district level and then at the school level as well. It's great that schools have professional development money. One thing we're very proud of is our inquiry-based learning, making sense of information. We have a really strong partnership with Critical Explorers that we want to continue. And that is a very important component, in my opinion, for project-based learning, whether it's STEAM, whether it's global competencies, whether there's a lot of other different kinds of areas where we can do project-based learning. But in my opinion, students need to make sense of information and develop meaning from the information that they have before they make something with their own voice. It's got to happen together. You have to have the inquiry and then you can do the design. We've worked hard on the inquiry. We're sort of shifting focus and really focusing on the project base now, and in a lot of different ways. Laura here. There you are. Laura won a grant. We have a grant so that the high school program. Oh man, I'm just blanking out. Laura, help me.
Project Lead.
Project Lead the Way. We are going to be able to have Project Lead the Way classes next year with, through the grant, and that's going to enhance our enrichment program and make our enrichment program more interesting and challenging. We are also very focused on helping staff members, and we're in the middle of trying to plan a workshop with the Buck Institute that hopefully will happen in June. I think we've made a big step today, and we're gonna continue to do that. And the Buck Institute has models of how to teach project-based learning regardless of what curriculum you have. And that's different from Project Lead the Way, because there are modules that Project Lead the Way have that are sort of packaged, while the Buck Institute does that. And we have a lot of teachers right now experimenting with project-based learning. We have a water unit that one of our clusters has taught last year, and it's going to and is sort of in the process of revising and making it better. That's another group of teachers is really focusing on cities, and there's going to be a cities unit. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to call it, but about how cities work and all the systems in cities and things like that. That's going to be an interesting one. And of course, we have our Choosing to Participate project, which is our capstone project for the 8th grade as well. And the 6th grade too is really changing the World's Fair. It's going to be very different from previous World's Fair. Lots more engagement there. And that leads to sort of the next theme, which is global competencies. Really trying to teach students how to understand the world around them with empathy, understand different perspectives, and actually from an analytical standpoint, sort of understand how the different perspectives interplay and critically think about what what's right or what we need to do. Communicating with diverse audiences. Often that is in other languages other than English, and our world language program is really focusing on that. And then taking action, which is all about our community service and everything like that. Some of the things that that have really developed a whole lot of momentum in the realm of global competencies is our Kingian training. That started with a visit by Dr. Lafayette about this time last year. It's just been a year, 12 months. And in August, there was a class that trained teachers, students, and police officers in Kingian, and it just took off. And now our 6th graders are learning about Kingian nonviolence in their advisory program. There's an enrichment class about Kingian nonviolence in our school. There are community classes that had just happened. Our 5th graders have gotten a taste of Kingian nonviolence at the Lowell McCunnough, and Hosmer is on deck. And I'm really excited about how this framework for promoting peaceful relationships has taken off, and we're going to continue to work on that next year. In the budget is a completion of the Chromebook initiative. So as you saw, the high school had 11th and 12th graders having Chromebooks. Also in the budget is 6th graders having Chromebooks, and so by the end of hopefully next year, we will have one-to-one Chromebooks, grades 6 through 12, continuously. And that is going to be terrific. But it's not just that. I mean, something that's very important, I just want to recognize Tony Carlson. There you are. Tony's been very helpful with us as far as supporting our teachers as they are working with their Chromebooks and their technology integration. She's created whole classes for teachers that they can either do in person or online, learning about not only Chromebooks, but the software that that Chromebooks need, including Google Classroom and other types of tools that students can learn, that can use. Our kids love their Chromebooks. It's something, and it's really transformed teaching. But it doesn't work unless we have the support, and I'm happy to know that Tony will still be supporting us at the middle school next year, and that's something that is very important. We have the makerspace also that's really helped with our project-based learning and our technology integration, because it's not just computer technology when we're thinking about technologies. There's lots of different kinds of technologies, and our makerspace has that. And again, the key to our makerspace is our person who leads the makerspace, Justin Smith, who is an instructional assistant who oversees all the materials and teaches classes after school and brings kids who are interested into the fold. And some of the projects in the makerspace right now that really intrigue me is that they have made their own video game, like old 80s style arcade game thing with a screen where they actually can put their program, their scratch programs or whatever they decided to on the screen, so they actually can play the game, you know, old school style. That was one really interesting thing. There was a number of classrooms are now utilizing the makerspace in their curriculum. Justin is busy every single day now working with teachers, and it's really taken off. And that is something, and in the budget, we will be continuing to see how we can expand the makerspace as far as the kind of materials. And we're gonna need to monitor, I think, because I think we're gonna get to the point where, you know, Justin might be getting a little overwhelmed, and we may need to figure out exactly how much more support we can give teachers and students using these new tools. One thing we're very proud of is that our work with BC, Boston College, in having 3 liaisons for our non-English speaking families. This is about communication. We've had, so we have 3 liaisons, and they are the point people for our Portuguese-speaking population, our Spanish-speaking population, and our Urdu and Pushtu populations. We've had meetings. I've been to 3 meetings with there, and what I've gotten from those meetings is a huge amount of thankfulness and hope and optimism from these families who really, you know, to be honest, are isolated from our school community because of the language barrier. We found that the most successful groups are liaisons, are people who work in our school, so that they know the school a little bit better. It's just a lot easier to know what's going on and know exactly where to get resources and who to talk to than those people who are affiliated with the school but aren't in the school building every day. And so one proposal that we have, and it's something that I think we need to think hard about, is seeing if we can stipend some people who are already there in the school district to be these liaisons, so that they can continue the really good work that they're doing, connecting with the non-English speaking families in their native languages and giving a lot of feedback. One thing that was interesting about our Pakistani families is that we had through our liaison, we had a very important conversation to have about our cafeteria food. That was their number one concern, is that much of our food was not appropriate for them to eat. And we're making changes, and now we're seeing more students being able to buy their lunches instead of bringing lunch from home. And that's something that I think is very important. We're going to continue to work on that.
Before you go on, I just wanted to flag this program, because we've had the opportunity to hear a lot about it at site council as well. And it's, you know, obviously it's not the middle school, but it's something that I think as a district we really want to think about for all our schools, because it's, you know, it just seems like a really excellent program and something that's kind of long overdue district-wide.
I think you can probably do it for relatively short dollars.
Yep.
You know, stipends versus whole positions, you know, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I think it would be well worth it. I mean, again, we've just done it for, less than a year. It sort of got off the ground in November, it's been to March, and already we're reaping a number of benefits from it. And then finally, I just want to acknowledge, our windows are going up this summer, everything is on gas. That's a big budget item, and, but it's going to make a huge difference, both in the comfort and safety of our students, and then the facade is going to be beautiful. So, if anyone has any questions, we have a whole bunch of coordinators who can ask, but that's what I have.
That's great.
All right, thank you.
There are numbers behind all these budgets, by the way. And you have those in front of you, so we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I think the beauty is that we've seen them presented in multiple ways now, so I think there's a comfort with them and an understanding behind them, so that's appreciated.
It's a UDL approach.
So moving to the elementary schools, so we'll start with Mina, but let me just as a intro about enrollments and projections there. So we did the same thing with the enrollment projections for next year for the elementaries. And you have in your packet copy of a slide that has the projections and the one scenario of what staffing might be. Keep in mind, these are the classrooms only. It does not include special education. It doesn't include any other related staffing that might be, counselors or OT, PTs, those kind of things. So it's classrooms only. And basically what we do is we do the projections, again, based on the Decision Insights projections. And then we try to create one scenario that will staff the building and keep the class sizes at or under the guidelines. Often what happens is, so that is just one possible scenario. So what can happen is the principal might come to us and say, you've, in this particular case, I'll just pick one up here, looking at that. Mina might say, I've, those 42 kids in 2 sections in second grade, I may want to do something different there. I may want to do more of a multi-age thing, and I might want to do a 2-3 multi-age because it makes sense from the makeup of the students to the layout of the building. So it doesn't. So this isn't fixed. That this has to be. It's not mandated, I guess, is what I'm saying. That there have to be this number of sections in each of the grade levels, and that will be the same thing at Hosmer and the same thing at Lowell. What this is it shows that for kind of this year there are 17 classroom teachers. I'm using classroom teachers in kind of situation to include the learning support, and 17 next year. So there's really no change in the total number, but as you can see, there may be a change in the way those 17 are allocated. If you look at Hosmer, this year there are 31 classrooms for that keep the classes very, very under guideline. Next year on the projection, there's a scenario with 29 FTEs, and that's what's built in the budget. And still, all of the classes are at or under 22 students up and down. Now, again, they may choose not to have that particular allocation grade by grade level, but that would be a way of doing it with 29 staff members. At Lowell,
Could we just go,
Yep.
A quick reminder of what the guidelines, I think the school committee approved a set of guidelines, what?
Yep.
Yep,
Sure, 18 to 20 in the lower, so first, let me see, if I have to look at the chart to make sure I do this right. Fourth and fifth grade is 22 to 24, then go back. Second and third grade is 20 to 22, and K1 is 18 to 20.
Okay.
So if we look at Lowell, again, this year, 22 classrooms. Next year, while the allocation is a little bit, the numbers in the classrooms are a little bit different. The number of classrooms would remain the same at 22. So that's where we started, and that's what the principals have been operating on, and I know that they may want to talk to you a little bit about that as we go through their presentation. So let's start with that kind of.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the recent accomplishments in Hunnick this year. The first one is that we created a school-wide schedule that supports planning time for grade level teams, and this is a really important ingredient for success throughout the school year, because I think we have common planning time encourages collaboration and also discussions that are really productive in terms of planning and instruction that meets student needs. So that really set us off to a good point in September, because we were able to move with this schedule, and it really is something that teachers have used successfully throughout the school year and continue to. Also, it enables me to have opportunities to meet with grade level teams and discuss students, a cohort of students that we all show ownership of at each grade level. So I'm really happy that we were able to accomplish that this year. Secondly, we have literacy and mathematics data grids that are regularly updated. Some of the data points that we have for mathematics now encourage us to have conversations not by how many test items students got incorrectly, but to talk about mastery in terms of basic mastery, a basic understanding of the concept or skill, or moving forward to application. How many students can apply a concept or skill, or even looking at the challenge level and thinking of students who have reached that novel level and need the enrichment piece. So really utilizing the core program well and all the components of it. In terms of literacy, we also manage data grids for literacy, and we update regularly key aspects such as using the quick phonics screener, which gives us a gauge on phonics ability and decoding that kids have in place. Also Fountas and Pinnell instructional reading levels, so we can have discussions about what does it look like to have a good tiered instructional grouping in your classroom, and what does an instructional reading look like versus independent reading, where students can basically pick up a text and read it on their own, as opposed to instruction that needs to happen with teachers. So those kinds of conversations are all happening as a result of data grids that we're using and manipulating, constantly and updating, and they're shared among all members of a grade level team. So at any point, anybody can access a data grid and look at the data for any particular student or any particular grade level in the school. So we have good ownership of that as a faculty. The next thing is, in January, we implemented an RTI block in mathematics, and we took from September through December to really go through a lot of important meetings that really gave us an opportunity to look at some of the standardized test scores that we have for students in terms of MCAS and PARCC data that we have from the past, and also looking at what we wanted to accomplish in terms of using the Math and Focus program and really managing the realm of instruction that needs to happen so that we have reached all of our students and all of our learners with that program. So in January, we actually started up a new data grid called an RTI data grid for mathematics. And we started looking at students who did not meet the standard or meet the basic level of understanding in a core chapter. So for example, if chapter 3 in grade 2 focused on addition with double digits, we looked at students who did not reach the basic understanding level there, and then we started forming groups of reteaching for students. We also looked at students who really mastered the entire chapter, and we have an RTI group at each grade level that's a challenge group as well. The piece that we need to continue to work with is we only do this once a week, and we have a lofty goal of next year trying to implement it 3 times a week or even more as part of the standard math block. Currently for grades 3 through 5, our math block is 90 minutes long, and next year we hope to have this as an integral part of that, and for grade K to 2 as well. So the RTI programming map is something that's very new to us, and we're continuing to explore it and to work with the components of that as well. The next thing that I want to talk a little bit about is we are emphasizing standard-based instruction when developing cross-curricular projects and also teaching units of study. And I do want to credit the curriculum coordinators because they've done a fantastic job this year, really empowering teachers to look at standards and address those when they're teaching, and not just to teach a unit that, you know, seems interesting, exciting, and creative, but also to align the standards with those units as well. And I also want to credit Teresa, because I know she's led them as well in managing all of that. So the PD has been really exciting this year, and I see a lot of excellent practices taking place in classrooms when there's teaching going on that's based on the standards. And even in terms of when I enter a classroom and I'm asking students, what are you learning about? They actually have a good sense of some of the skills that they are focusing on, and they have a good understanding of that, so that's really good to see. Also, let me see if I've missed anything. So in terms of cross-curricular projects, one of the things that we did this year at kind of, and that we're continuing to move through, is we have a goal as a faculty of collaboration, and we have a commitment from all of our grade level teams pre-K to 5 that they were all going to engage in some kind of cross-curricular project that had some STEAM components to it as well, and that project would be aligned with the standards, and that also we would celebrate that project across the school by having a showcase. And it's been really successful. I think that's one of the high points that we have at Cunniff this year, is that we all look forward to when a grade level announces that they finished a STEAM project or a project-based theme that they're going to showcase for the school. And during the month of March, we actually have had 2 exhibits. I know 2 weeks ago, our kindergarten students hosted a polar animal exhibit for the whole school. And after lunch one day at 1:30, everybody got to go through all 3 kindergarten classes and see the polar animals that the students really made. And, you know, kids asked questions about, you know, what was the polar animal, what were the adaptations, what was blubber, and kindergarten kids were the experts answering questions that 4th and 5th graders were asking, so it was wonderful to see. And then last week, our 4th grade students showcased a project on, which was STEAM-based also, and that was on animal adaptations. And so we're looking forward to the rest of the year and the showcases for our other grade levels as well. The next thing I'd also like to just spend a minute talking about is the introduction of the Spanish program in kindergarten for grades. For our kindergarten students, they actually have kindergarten Spanish instruction 5 days a week this year for 30 minutes. And I want to credit Adam for doing such a great job bringing that program in. And it's amazing to go into kindergarten classes and see them responding and really engaging in conversation with the Spanish teacher and being able to name colors, parts of bodies, and looking at a skill page that they're completing, and they actually can articulate every single thing that they're doing in Spanish, so it's wonderful to see. Even I was complimenting last week one of my kindergarten teachers who's now speaking Spanish as well, so it's a win-win for students and teachers. The next thing that I'd like to spend a minute on is also in February, we spent a month-long focus on citizenship and just talking about core values in our school. I know the behavior specialist in my school, Elaine Antonellis, and the guidance team, Courtney Carey and Kim Golden, we tried to spend a week talking about core words and values that we wanted to instill in our students, and kids really started talking about words like empathy and gratitude. And so we really spent a month looking at some really hefty words that we want our kids to understand the meaning of, and also see those, you know, feelings and you know, ability to communicate those in our school as well. So we spent a month focusing on that theme, and we also invested in our library at Cunniff some books that really tied in those themes so that teachers could use the literature and communicate kind of in story fashion what a lot of those vocabulary terms meant for them. One of the things that is coming up at Cunniff is we're hosting an international fair. I know this is hosted, but we're hosting on June 8th our first international fair at Cunniff. and we're in the planning stages of that right now. We've had two meetings, which began in February, and we're really hoping to have many of our families participate in that and have a lot of participation in terms of planning what we want it to look like. So we have, that is an exciting opportunity that's coming up in the next couple of months.
Can
And
we
then
come?
finally, I'm sorry,
Can we come?
you can, everyone is invited, absolutely. You'll need a passport.
She's got one.
Right person.
And then finally, always good to have student input, so we have a student council at school as well now, and I meet with them once a month. In fact, today I was reminded that I didn't have my monthly meeting yet by one of the students who was walking by, and he was telling me about what a mess one of the Chromebook carts is upstairs, and he was explaining how the wires were all tangled up, and I said, okay, we'll bring that up at our next meeting. So those are the accomplishments that kind of, in terms of, does anybody have any questions or?
It just sounds so wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, fun.
And fun.
Exciting. Creative for kids to work on those things. So goals, I think a lot of the goals that I mentioned here really tie in with some of the successes that we've had in our school. So for FY18, just continuing, the building of instructional materials that will support the development of a balanced literacy block. I know this year we're really looking at foundations becoming tier 1 in all of our 3 elementary schools and really boosting the balanced literacy program. And so really having the ability to purchase and also solidify libraries that classrooms have so that the core instruction is the base, because if core instruction is solidified, then everything else falls into place as well in terms of tiered instruction. Again, professional development with math in focus and also with some of the literacy pieces that we have in place. And I know STEM scopes for science teachers are starting to use those units, those digital units this year. And I can already see the difference in terms of what students are grasping and how teachers are using the resource effectively. So continued professional development with that as well. The FLES program, we're happy to say, is going to include Spanish instruction in grade 1 next year, so we're excited about that. And I think we're moving from 5 days a week to 3 days a week for grades K and 1, but nonetheless, still a wonderful opportunity for kindergarten and first graders. The idea of continuing to boost data and assessment and having somebody to support those practices for teachers is exciting for me as a principal, and I know it will be exciting for teachers as well, because sometimes using Google Docs and spreadsheets that they create can be a little cumbersome when you start, scrolling across the page, and it gets a little bit cumbersome, but we're looking forward to support with that as well. The expansion of the music program to support project-based learning. I know this year we've had a wonderful music teacher who really is getting into classrooms. She, last month, just to give you a good example, she did a wonderful job building a jazz unit that tied in social studies and the 1950s with our 5th grade team, and it was just fabulous to watch and see, and kids really internalize that kind of learning, so it really becomes a wonderful experience. Social emotional curriculum that I'm on a team with Kathy and Teresa, and we're excited about that. At Conniff, the representative members of that are a kindergarten teacher and myself, so we're looking forward to building that social emotional curriculum for our teachers. And garden coordinator, who's collaborating with teachers to develop connections with our science units. Judy Fallows, she continues to do a wonderful job with that. And that's basically the goals that we have for Conniff. Does anybody have any questions?
Great, thank you.
Robert. Thanks.
delay getting started. So I guess I'm gonna take a little of Chemo and Shirley's design and go back in time and talk about the before we got to these accomplishments. This is my 4th year here, and I've worked in a few other districts as an administrator and had budgets before, and I know what they look like, but I haven't seen one in 3 years. Done so well, so thank you, Mary, for such a clear, concise, and all-encompassing budget. Businessmen would have to compliment them.
So that's what
Trying everything today. So the most important thing, I think, with the accomplishments are the teachers, and for me, getting to know the teachers in 4 years, you can only learn so much, but the satisfaction for me is getting to see a community, and Watertown is a great community. I grew up here, I'm back here. It is different, but it's even better than it was before. And the town of Watertown, as I'm sure you saw today around town, is a really tight-knit community, and they love their town. You love your town. And a school is the same way. We want to build community within a school. You get the right teachers, you put them in the right place, you support the children as much as possible. I can tell you with confidence that every deficit that Watertown has had over time is being addressed right now, thanks to all of the new things happening with Dr. Rackett, Dr. McGinnis, everybody else. Everything is being addressed. So if you're fearful or worried about something not being improved, don't worry anymore. It's all set. It's a matter of time. And we talked about co-teaching a lot tonight, and there are different types of co-teaching. One teacher being in a room with another teacher is co-teaching, whether it's for an hour or for the whole day. So co-teaching is a valuable way to work with the child in the class. I was lucky enough to go to a conference recently where we talked about several things, but one of them was that a child who's included in a general ed class is 4.79 times more likely to graduate on time. So if anything else, that tells you they have to be in class. How do they get in class? As much as they are able to. So there are substantially separate classrooms because that's what the child needs. And then there are some hybrids, and then there's some full inclusion. So we want to support the children while they're in class. Historically, Watertown has decided that in IA, instructional assistant is the way to do it. That was a great idea for a time and for some children. What it is, it can be very costly, and you don't always have the most best trained people there. You have fantastic IAs, but IAs are typically certified teachers who are looking for jobs, and they leave for jobs. And I found after my 2nd year that we were continually hiring new IAs. So as they left through attrition, we refilled a couple of positions with special education teachers. That put them in the classroom, that allowed them to teach and divide their time between 2 general ed teachers rather than 1. So we found that to be very effective. That was a huge accomplishment. We started with 2 teachers, a special education teacher and a general ed teacher, who I couldn't separate. They kept getting together, so I said, finally, just stay in class together, learn your students, and don't. So that tells you that the social connection, the work connection for those 2 people is the most important thing for successful co-teaching. You can't just take 2 random teachers, put them together, and say, go co-teach. So it starts with the relationship. So that worked. We added that, another one in the 2nd year and another 3rd year, so we have co-teaching full day in grades 3, 4, and 5. So some children go there, and some children are in the other classrooms, and they receive different levels of push-in. IEPs say different things. Some say they need support during literacy, so there's no need to have them during math, social studies, gym, lunch. So we gave them what they need, where they need, so that we're not giving them too much of a crutch, and they can learn to be independent. That's how our co-teaching model goes. And you've also heard about RTI, response to intervention. So I gave that a lot of thought. In response to intervention, you wouldn't respond to a behavior after the behavior's happened. You try to get to the behavior before it happens, creating the proper environment. So we're trying to respond to a child's needs before that need is a problem. So that's what co-teaching, push-in, being available, having the trained staff. We were able to have 2 special education teachers who are also Wilson and or Orton Gillingham trained in reading, so they can do focused instruction. So those are some of the beginning accomplishments. In addition, what we have done in the past year is we've formed a flexible grouping from grades 5 down to grades 3. Flexible grouping means basically if you have 80 students in a grade level, you assess them in reading or math, and you put them in order of their ability for that period of instruction. They don't stay there all year, it's not tracking, it's nothing like that. It's for that period of instruction, for that unit, they'll be in that flexible group, and they go to one of the teachers. So the children, there's less variance to their ability level. The more people, the smaller the group, the better you are. So if you have 5 teachers, now you add a special education teacher, an ESL teacher, a reading teacher, and now you have a smaller group, and it's much more effective. So we've been doing flexible groupings for the last few years, and it's been very effective. I'm sorry I don't have enough copies for everybody, but some of the value of the flexible grouping can be seen in the first chart. It's a bar graph that says in 2011-12, 36% of the students at the Hosmer School were reading below grade level. 2015-16, that's down 27%. So we improved the number of students that were below grade level. We lowered that number, which is the direction we want to go in. It coincides with the flexible grouping, the co-teaching, and the instruction that the teachers are delivering.
Bob, quick question.
Yes.
This is awesome growth. What metric, I'm just curious, which metric are you using?
Elefantis and Puma.
Okay.
Second one is a pie chart that,
And this is for all grades.
all grades, yes. The pie chart, we picked a cohort because it's hard to measure a third grade every year because it's a different group of children. So we took grade 3 in March 2015, 44% were one level below, 22% were on or above. So we wanted to obviously cut down on the red color and the purple color and increase the blue color. So we went from 22%, if I flip the page over, that same cohort going on to grade 4, 61% of the students are on or above. So that's the same group from one year to the next that are getting flexible grouping and co-teaching and different kinds of instruction from the teachers. Good class size is the key. And the value of a teacher in the classroom is the most important measurement of whether a student is going to succeed. So we're really happy with the class sizes. We asked the community a few years ago, do you support this? It costs more. And that's what the community and you have to decide, is it worth the cost? And in my opinion, having the teachers in small class sizes is more than worth the cost. And I think the cost will be reduced in middle and high school because these students are going to be more able when they get to the middle school. And they'll be better readers. The next one is a bar graph of 7 students. These are 7 students that have specialized reading services in a tier 2. They came in below grade level, and they also have social emotional difficulties. So they're children that can't manage themselves in class, that might in some way earn them maybe a specialized placement, maybe sub-separate or something like that. They've been kept in class. We've been supporting them with our behavior specialists, and their improvement is pretty considerable considering these students were studied so far behind. The last one is just a unique situation that tells you about Watertown and about the Hosmer School. This is a student that came to us last March from Mexico, speaking initially an indigenous tribal language. He was Spanish as a second language student. They came to us as English as a third language student. So they came in 3rd grade and they were assessed in math, and they were grade 1.5, so halfway through the 1st grade year. One of those teachers I talked about with the Orton Gillingham reading instruction and special education background worked with the child 30 minutes a day, 3 days a week, and they were able in 7 months to come up to grade 3.5. So they're at grade level, now they're dismissed from the program. This isn't a lifelong sentence. This is an intervention to help them get them on track so they can go into general ed. So that's a success story for that child. So we're really happy about that. That's another one of our accomplishments that we feel is important. And one of your questions, I'm sure, is you gave us a lot of money over the last few years. Where'd the money go and where's the payout? That's the payout to me. We're educating the students. We're creating whole students. We're educating them academically and also working through social, emotional, and good citizenship. One of the things I was proud of recently, and thank you, Dr. Goldston, for being here, because we had 5 5th grade ambassadors who were able to meet with the superintendent candidate at the time and interviewed. So we met briefly before. They said, what do you want us to ask them? What would you like to ask the person? We want to know if they're nice. We want to know if they're going to fix our building, if wind will stop coming through the windows in the winter. If our swing set, can we have more swings because everyone loves to swing?
It's important.
And one of our children speaks Spanish and said, is it okay if I speak to her in Spanish? And I said, sure. So she greeted her and said hello in Spanish. They had a conversation. I haven't worked with Adam long enough to know what they said, but in time, I'll be able to help out there. And the other thing that's kind of popular in education is UDL, Universal Design for Learning. You hear about it a lot. Universal Design for Learning is meeting the child where they are, creating an environment that's flexible that they can come in and out of. In our opinion, what we were doing at Osborne School is just that, universal design. And it's effective, it's research-driven, and there's data to support it. So that's kind of that. And goals for the future, I guess, going forward. All right, so the goals that the budget supports is, one of the things that we don't have, we're not doing well in Watertown is uniformity within schools, across grade levels and across the district. But again, that's one of those things that's being addressed right now. And a group of 8 led by Dr. McGinnis is going to a Literacy Institute to find out what's the best literacy program for us, how do we collect the data, how do we analyze the data and get it in usable form to the teachers. We've started a little bit of that, and I think that's helpful, but I envision in the next couple of years it getting more and more better. We have created next year in our schedule a 30-minute block, naming it, stealing the Lowell School's name of IC Intervention Challenge Block. You're intervening in the student that's struggling, and you're challenging those students that can do the work and are looking for something more challenging. You don't give a 3rd grade student 4th grade work, you give them 3rd grade work that's got more depth or more writing or more impact for the child. So we are able to go across grade level and give from K through 5 a 30-minute block the same time every day, so that our reading specialists can get in there and help with reading on different levels to focus reading groups. So it could be you're reading more in depth, you're writing about it. There are 3 reasons to read. You read for entertainment, you read to perform a task, and you read for information. So depending on what the child is doing, we want to focus a little bit more on reading for information, basically non-fiction books. That's what we're hoping to focus on next year. Again, the music teacher edition 1.0 frees up one of our music teachers who travels sometimes 7 times a day and is just lugging his instruments all over. Won't have to do that. He'll be more focused in our building. It helps out 4 of the school, 5 schools, I believe. And it also will open up a string and a chorus in our building to free up our music teacher to run that. So that's really exciting. And thanks to Meg Schlesinger, also our FAPA coordinator. Since she's come in, we have expanded FAPA, and in no time there'll be drama happening all around this. Good drama, not the bad drama. And thanks to the budget, we're able to purchase really necessary materials. She had to leave to relieve her babysitter, but Elizabeth Kaplan, since she took over only months ago, has been rebuilding the science program, buying proper and appropriate things, researching, going to other districts, being part of the science math community. And we are revisiting math and focus training and anticipate that's going to get a lot better. Our math scores were effective, I think, by the fact that we trained when we got this program and then stopped training. So we need to reinvigorate that, and that's in action. So feel good about that. The one request I would have respectfully, but passionately, is to reconsider possibly raising the 2 reductions above the line. Below the line is not yet funded, above the line would be funded. If we could fund those, it would be very important. The community building we did for the last 3.5 years would be sending teachers to professional development. They've gone to other towns like Newton, they've watched their program, worked with their program, and they have built a team. With this reduction, you can't just selectively pick 2 areas that are overstaffed. It would require changing the staffing from grades 1 through 5, so every team would be broken up or changed. And all the work we put in, I think, would be hard to rebuild, especially potentially with the new buildings going on around town. 3 of the 5 are in the Hosmer district, And if they were sent to another school, then the cost of busing or transportation might play into it, so then they wouldn't be part of their neighborhood school. So I just respectfully ask that you consider raising that most.
And can I ask you, so, and I'm sure you're seeing in, you know, some of these amazing statistics you have based on the co-teaching models, that's to what you're speaking, that if these teams break up, these established teams that have built up trust over the years with each other, grades 4, 5, and 3, that would have a detrimental effect on the teams, or what
Yes.
kind of effect are you describing?
Yes, it would separate the teams, it would create a scenario where a co-teaching model, this is expensive, where a special education teacher can maybe have 20 or 25 students on their caseload. In a co-taught model, you probably have 8 or 9. You have to have 51% of the students general ed in order to meet requirements. So that teacher would have 8 students on a caseload. There are more children per grade level. For example, this year, grade 3, we have 16 students with IEPs. If 8 of those students, 12 students. If 8 of those students were in the co-taught classroom, 4 would be in another classroom. We also have 16 students that are ESL, 2 of whom are newcomers, which means they need 2 hours of direct language instruction. So now it would be, they'd be separated among 3 teachers rather than 4. So one teacher would have general ed, ESL, and special education, and that would be a little bit of a challenge for that teacher to find that right place to teach.
I do want to acknowledge that I received a letter from teachers. I think several of us received a letter from teachers asking for the additional slots. I want to just understand when the conversations were happening around the above the line versus below the line. How did that go in terms of getting these two, or keeping these 2 positions? Was it a change of heart in arguing for it, or how did that?
There are so many variables in creating that budget, and as many pages as it is. I have a file in my office where the budget was empty, and now I have 3 folders for
Yep.
everybody, so there's a lot of material.
Yep.
It's not an easy answer to how that happened.
Yep.
There are priorities, the group got together, and everyone has a different, this is my perspective of
Right.
Osmond's. Everyone has a different perspective, coordinators have certain ideas on what they want, so you can only get so much with the money you have. So with the money you have, this is how it fell out.
I guess I have 2 questions, just to follow up on that. It's not exactly clear to me, if I look at the chart here in terms of the changes in class, the number of classes and all, so you have like in 3, 4, and 5, if you followed this scenario, 2 of them would go from, grade 3 would go from 5 to 4, and grade 4 would go from 5 to 4, and grade 5 would stay the same. So you'd be losing 1 classroom in the 3rd and 1
Grade
classroom.
2 also, grade 2.
And then 2, and grade 1 goes up from 5 to 6. So in most cases here, you'd be losing somebody, so, kind of the team teaching model, the co-teaching that's taking place, if someone left, that makes it difficult, those 4 that are left couldn't continue in that kind of, flexible grouping or whatever kind of co-teaching they're doing?
So the way it would go is we have a 1st grade teacher retiring. There are 5 teachers, that lowers it to 4. So we would have to move a 2nd grade teacher to 1st grade, that would bring it up to 5. And then a 3rd grade teacher down to 1st grade. 3rd grade teachers aren't necessarily suited to teach 1st grade. Some can, some don't do it well. And some aren't equipped with the early numeracy and the literacy training. And then a 4th grade teacher would move up to 5th grade, because in 5th grade we have a long-term sub filling in for a teacher who was on maternity leave and resigned. So grade 1 through 5, there'd be a different makeup of people in there, and in some cases they'd be out of place. Teachers are teachers, they're elementary teachers, they can work in different grade levels, but they're not often receiving the PD that would be, and the skill set that would be best suited.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, on the budget, and maybe this is a question to Mary as well, on the budget, it talks about a decline basically in 4 positions, from the level service budget to the preliminary budget. And so we've kind of talked about two here, but what are the other two, if I'm reading it correct?
So there was a reduction of one position going from the 2017 budget to the level service budget. And again, that was based on enrollment. So one of those teachers that you see with the ability to eliminate that position through attrition, that decision was made at the level service,
Okay.
at the level service stage of the budget development process. The additional teacher in the preliminary budget was eliminated due to the more refined analysis of the enrollment as presented tonight. So that shows where we would be able to eliminate two positions and still maintain class sizes that are within guidelines, but also consistent with the other schools at each of the grade levels, which, equity is part of what we look at when we try
But the
to-
level service goes from 114.5 to 110?
There are also IAs.
Oh, I see, okay, okay,
If you look on the slide previous to that,
yeah.
you can look at where the FTE changes are.
Exactly, yeah, so under general education, you see a decrease from FY17 from 25 to 23, those are your two classroom teachers. And then you see there's a slight increase in the music teacher that actually, I think is actually, I don't know if that's you, that's the preschool one that went up.
So special
then-
education, yeah,
The special education, those are paraeducators,
yeah, okay,
IAs,
yeah, okay.
and then a speech and language reduction. There's also an increase in class.
Okay.
So in the net, those are the ins and outs that you're seeing.
Any other questions?
I'm concerned, is this something that's avoidable or not? Because I am concerned about teams breaking up, because my own children went to Hosmer, and I have had the benefit of them being in these co-taught model classrooms, and frankly, they're amazing. They're like magical. It feels like private school. I say it like that, but, you just have this high level of engagement of every child, and it's unusual. It just doesn't feel the same as it's not the same as regular classroom. So, I'm just concerned about that.
Yeah, I don't argue with anything that has been said, right? So, as we looked at the budget, we looked again at the numbers and the class sizes, and you can see what they are. I understand the strong desire to keep groups together, to keep teams together. Unfortunately, we've never staffed that way because teams change all the time. People move on, people have babies, those teams. The kinds of things that flexible groupings, for example, flexible groupings can continue to happen with 4 teachers as well as 5 teachers. So all of those strategies can continue. The numbers change a little bit, but the strategy, it's not that you can't have those strategies. But when we've approached this from a standpoint of, I think Mary mentioned, we try to make it come in under guidelines and kind of keeping schools equitable. And that's where we got to the 29. If you add it's a decision by school committee, right?
Yeah, so we have to think about it.
And so if you direct us to add the 2 people back, we'll talk with Bob about what it looks like. Now remember, in addition to these classroom teachers, we also have reading teachers that can provide support, and and those are differentiated by size of school as well. But what we would have to do then is look at our overall budget and take things that are now above the line and move them below the line. So there has to be some trade-offs, and it'll just, we'll have to spend a little time looking at that and where do we want to do it. So that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and I think, we're still in the budget process, right?
Right.
We'll be in the budget process for a while, so.
I just wanted to bring that up, but
Yeah.
those are questions.
And just to kind of, before we turn it over to Phil at Lowell, just kind of thinking about this process. These are hearings, this is where people have an opportunity to ask and argue and, advocate. We will, when this process is done, we'll go back and put together, and then you get what we call the superintendent's recommended budget, and that's what we'll have a public hearing on. So we're still within the budget development process. There's been no decisions made. Because another option that the school committee can say, we're trying to keep this within the 5%.
Right.
The other thing the school committee could say is, we want to go to 6% or whatever. And then we would have to go back and take a look at that. So there are a number of different avenues that we can pursue.
Yeah, I'd just like to add one thing that unless I'm incorrect, it seems like the elementary school with the highest percentage of high needs students is the Hosmer. And, losing 2 teachers in that setting is particularly painful, I think. So we really have to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Yep. Yep.
Right, Lowell.
Last
So-
but not least.
Yes, sorry, I've been sitting for waiting the whole time. So I was new to the budget process, so I want to thank Mary again I understood it right away, because it was detailed and, on an Excel sheet that made sense. So for a newbie, it was really easy to understand. We've done a lot of good stuff at the Lowell this year. Thanks to Elizabeth Kaplan, the school improvement plan that I inherited was very detailed and, very good. So it gave me a clear path and also, clear path and some ideas, and also, just a well set up plan that the teachers couldn't really push back on either. As a new principal, it was, a chance for, guys, look at the school improvement plan, we have to do these things, So that was a good start off for me as a new principal. So, we rolled out K-5 math RTI, and that was also something, coming from being a math teacher, that seemed like an easy first step for me. And I would say that it's gone, now that we're all the way into March, all grade levels are doing it. There are certainly some model grade levels that are doing a little bit better than everybody else, and we're gonna have to, take a look at how they've done it this year to improve all grade levels. Grade 5 has 3 times per week for 30 minutes, which is definitely the best model so far that I've seen anyway. And that's using data-driven, assessments and all that. They've done pre-assessments, they've done post-assessments, they revisit old standards that they've already taught. So they're kind of the model on how to, figure out if the reteaching is working and all that. 4th grade, I would say, is twice a week, and then 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and K. I've only really done it once per week, but again, there's still I inherited a good data culture, so everybody was comfortable talking about data. We have an assessment grid for each grade level, where people are constantly updating with math and focus assessments and reading benchmarks. So, the data is a comfortable thing for them, so that was, kind of nice to inherit again. And, we had every grade level at least trying it out by November 1st, which was a good start. And, again, now that we've kind of hit it full stride, grade levels are starting to really kind of embrace it, and, the kids are really excited about it. It's a fun way to talk about math. It's not necessarily a, rigid math lesson. It's a time for them to play games about certain targeted tasks or standards, and then also, push our highest learners that, don't necessarily always get that opportunity during regular classroom instruction. So we have, the top 10 students on assessment will then get to go, do some projects or really talk about high level, even middle school math in some cases. we had first graders talking about negative numbers. So, it's really led to some good conversations. Something that's not in here, which it's my fault, is we've also had the least restraints we've ever had in the last few years due to the utilization of our opportunity room. So again, our student support team has done a fantastic job of working together, kind of meeting on a regular basis and talking about kids that could bubble up and all that. So we've done a lot of the preventative measures to, that safety care teaches us to, do all the behavior prevention. And I think that this whole school's kind of embraced that, and we've done a really good job, keeping the numbers well below what has happened in the last few years. Moving on to literacy, big focus on numeracy and literacy, of course. Back to math for 1 second, sorry. We also had a great math night the other night, which, as we, really have a chance to focus on numeracy in the class, we were then able to take some of the successful lessons and projects and activities that we did in the RTI land and then brought it into math night where, students of all levels and abilities were able to come and play and have a good time. And it was, I would say over 100 kids showed up. It's kind of a guess, but we got rid of all of our, party gifts at the end, so that's good news. Deck of cards with the Lowell picture on it, how can you beat that? Thanks to Elizabeth Captain for picking that up, that was a big win. As we looked at the second bullet there, was utilizing the district reading specialist. So Ann Cox was a classroom teacher last year, and then in this year she ended up, she kind of wanted to change, and she moved to district reading specialist, and she started out with us the whole year. What she has brought as experience to kind of help lead the whole reading team in data and how to actually sit down and look at which kids need that tier 2 intervention so that we don't get to the referral process, kind of like what Bob said. We've done a really nice job of, I've given the first 15, 20 minutes of every grade level team meeting per month to have the reading team start with, okay, where are these kids at? These are the 6 that we have, this is how they're doing, these 3 I think are ready to go, what 3 can we bring in? So it's a really good, again, data-driven, using that assessment grid conversation that, I think we've done a really nice job on. And getting that extra district reading specialist just allowed us to hit on more kids for that tier 2 intervention. And then jumping, and keeping on that literacy theme, we did have a fantastic literacy night in the winter? November, we'll call it November, I think, where we had Nora Dooley, a really great author, come in and read to the kids, and the kids were all building their own bookmarks, and we made it a fun community building event where we really did focus on literacy the whole time. And right now we're in the middle of our reading challenge, where all of the classrooms compete against their grade level to read the most hours in a week. So, it's a very heated rivalry in the grades, but it's also kind of a fun competition. So, if you look at the demographics of the Lowell, we have 18% special ed and 15% ESL. When I, kind of stepped in on day 1, we had this thing called a consult time for special education. But if you actually look at those numbers, they're very close. So it was not equal in my view. So we took the consult times that we have been having for special education, and because we were able to get a third ESL teacher by last year's budget, that allowed us to have a little more time, a little more expertise to have those ESL teachers come talk to the teachers and only talk about those 6, 7 ESL students inside the classroom. So, you could actually target about how the home connection was going, issues they might have had. You get to know, the teachers are getting to know their ESL students better because the ESL teachers are devoting that extra 40 minutes every 2 weeks to just talk about those kids. So for me, that was a huge improvement. And I'm hoping that we see the results, at the end of the year, come data time. And also what it did was increase participation in International Night, where we actually got to talk about kids more, we got to know them better, and then all of a sudden they were more invested because we were reaching out more, so we knew more about them. So again, that homeschool connection, I think was really successful. And then jumping into, again, that global competencies that Kimo talked about, we have successfully integrated the FLES into the K and pre-K at the Lowell. It has been pretty funny. I actually have a niece who's a K mother. And she was not very good at Spanish in high school, and she's getting pushed by her K student to remember some of the words that she did not remember from high school Spanish. So that's been a pretty funny conversation to hear. But Adam didn't get a chance to talk about it on Monday, but from what we all read and all the studies that we read about, we have a literacy goal for the district, and if Spanish does end up following K through 5, it does end up following through, and we do get to see the long-term benefits, I do hope that, we'll see the literacy benefits too. So that's been fun to see, and we have a fantastic Spanish teacher. It's really fun to watch, if you ever get the chance, I'm telling you, it's the most entertaining 30 minutes of the day. We've also implemented, with the help of Derry Donovan, Foundations as a literacy curriculum for first grade. Again, that's a 40-minute block or 30 to 40-minute block of devoted only phonics, kind of thought on how they're going to attack words. So I think when you talk about the common assessments that we talked about, many times now over the course of the last couple nights, phonics ended up being an issue that we kind of didn't expect to see that we saw. So Foundations, I think, is a good program for that. In a good Foundations classroom, the kids are on a letterboard, they're moving magnets around, they're figuring out how words start and end and the blends that happen there. And it's definitely a good approach to have kids both engaged, so it's not just a boring reading lesson. It's, kids are hands-on, they're moving around, and they're, have a pointer, they have this owl that's a theme, like a mascot for the program, and the kids really do like it. So that's been really great. And then we've, gotten some new technology as everybody else is starting to move to the one-to-one Chromebooks. We kind of get the hand-me-downs, which, is actually fine for elementary school students, I think, because they're just being exposed to, just that new type of technology. They're learning how Google works. They're starting to program a little bit. Tony did a great job pushing the hour of code. So our library teacher ended up devoting her whole week to hour of code. So it wasn't in one day like it's supposed to be, but everybody got that time of doing the coding. So even K kids, trying to do some sort of, I think, Minecraft or whatever it's called, a Minecraft program where you have kids doing some cool stuff on that. So that's really nice to see too. Let me see, I missed anything? I don't think I did. Oh, we're also, in terms of the social emotional learning, I would say that the district is aware that we need to improve on that for sure, but, within our little school, we do have the core values that, we focus on, so even though it's not a set curriculum necessarily, we are addressing some of the issues in the anti-bullying and stuff like that. And we have a buddy program that's been very successful, and we've attached that to the reading challenge this week. So the buddies actually just got together and read with each other this month. It's something that simple. It's an extra 30 minutes per month. It's not that hard to do, and I think it really does raise the bar in terms of building a community and getting, you see the 5th graders high-fiving the 2nd graders in the hallway. It's pretty cute and awesome. Next. So you've heard a lot about co-teaching. Part of what we're getting in the budget for next year is an extra special education teacher. What we're dealing with right now is that we've got most of our special education teachers are running back and forth between different grade levels. And they're working their butt off. They're not doing anything wrong. It's just kind of like an impossible task that we're setting them up with. If you've got 8 kids in 5th grade, you've also got 4 kids in another grade. It's like, how can you really keep that equal, and how can you make sure that you're meeting the minutes the right way? And the co-planning can never really happen because, again, there's never that time for them to sit down together and discuss. So what I would like to do is have 1 special ed teacher per grade, then match with 1 classroom teacher or 2 classroom teachers, depending on how many, what the caseload is for the grade, and then have them have a devoted 200 minutes per week because of the 40-minute prep to sit down and discuss, how to best, present certain topics and certain lessons. So that's what I would do if I were in charge next year, was just kind of like come up with a plan. And again, Bob talked about those marriages. I do think that we have some marriages already kind of set up that you could roll and give it a shot for next year, and at least, give it a shot for something new, because we do have a pretty glaring achievement gap. And I think if we don't try something new, I think we're just gonna stay in the same spot. So that's what I would like to do anyway. So if that does happen, then we will need less special education consult time, which then means we will then have more ESL consult time. So it's like we're gonna be helping both groups by having that co-teaching, because that co-planning time and that discussion for special education students will then be able to actually happen during that 200 minutes per week. So, again, we're kind of hitting 2 of our bigger subgroups and giving some more time to devote just to them. This actually was just below the line too, so apparently I put that in before that second meeting of the budget. But we're at 22 next year for 3rd grade. Our 3rd grade team's fantastic. We will survive, but again, 17 would be better. And I think that's a pretty easy numbers thing. But again, 22 is fine. Our 3rd grade teachers would would do a great job. But also, we're gonna be losing some long-term subs that are really fantastic teachers because of the people coming back, and we get to maybe keep one of them if we were able to do that. I wrote this, it's got on there twice, but that's how important it is, I guess, that we really get some professional development on math and focus. You know, like Bob said originally, the implementation was great. I do think that it was a good way to get started. We haven't done anything since, but then if you think about new teachers and those first and second year and third year teachers that didn't get that first round, they've never had professional development. So they're just going in there, looking at the teacher's manual and kind of taking a guess. And they're working really hard. It's not on them. I think it's more on us as a district to make sure that they're set up for success. So when I go into the classrooms, math's my favorite thing to see, obviously, but there's people working really hard at trying to come up with how to reach them, but I think just a little bit of guidance would, shorten the work that goes into every lesson plan and also kind of, fine tune, something simple. I talked to a couple of first grade teachers the other day. They wanted to drop a chapter because they didn't get it. And I was like, well, hold on, actually, I like this chapter. Let me tell you why. And it was like something like 17 minus 2. Why do we have to worry about that 10? I'm like, well, because you're not borrowing, and just that little conversation for them was like, that's why you're doing that, and they just hadn't thought about why. So, giving us a little more time to think and really just focus on math, I think is huge. And I think that'll improve, the scores later, but really just improve the instruction on the tier 1 instruction so that we end up seeing less referrals down the road. And then more foundations professional development because we're gonna have to move. Now that we have the first grade that's had the foundations this year, we're gonna move into grade 2 next year. So it's gonna be grades 1 and grades 2. And they only had really, before the year started, 1 day of professional development, which, isn't quite enough. It kind of gave them the breakdown of how the book works. It gave them, how to set up the boards and all that. But other than that, there wasn't much targeted instruction. Now, Derek did a great job of trying to find a few times over the course of the year to have them, we found coverage and got them to go observe the Hosmer, and then, they went to Conf one day and all that. So that's been good, but I do think that even more availability over summer will then improve, that instruction one more time. FLES being moved to grade 1, it's gonna move from 5 days a week to 3 days a week, but again, we do get to at least have those KA kids move on to grade 1 and continue their Spanish. And again, we have great teachers, so we actually had like a perfect size school so that we don't need to have any more staff added. We'll be able to take the 25 blocks that they have now, it'll actually be 24 because it'll be 4 K classes, 4 grade 1 classes, multiplied out will be only 24 blocks, so we'll be in good shape, and that's a budget neutral thing for us in terms of comparing this year to next year, which is nice. And I didn't add this in, but STEM scopes next year for science is gonna be huge. All the teachers are really excited about it. There's connections within STEM. It's a new science curriculum that we're gonna try to move to. It's got ELA, like the reading to learn part is going to be really nice. There's ELA components built into STEM scopes, so we're going to be pushing some literacy within a content area, which I think is just, how you're going to keep those literacy scores rising. So, any questions? I talk fast. It's late.
Thank you. Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you.
I have another backup question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Not for that, but.
No, go ahead.
If I apologize, I actually want to come back to chemo if I could. Should have asked this at the time, but, so you're losing, like 5 positions at the middle school. And so I guess if you could, and it looks like mostly pretty much all in special education, is what it looks like on the budget.
I'm losing a number of positions. I'm not sure, some are gonna be instructional assistants and some are gonna be teachers.
Okay, well, I just wondered if you could speak to that, or kind of how you're going to, what's your plan of dealing with that?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna stay here. Some positions are attached pretty exclusively to the bubble of students that we have in 8th grade. We have extra sections of 8th grade versus 7th grade and 6th grade. Next year, we're gonna have 8 sections all across the board. And so that's one there. Some positions, not only do we have a loss of kids, but disproportionately we have a loss of special education kids. So our special education caseloads, both quantitatively and qualitatively, are much different next year. There's a number of high-need students who are moving from 8th grade to 9th grade. And so there's a number of the speech and language, APE, OT, those kinds of positions that we won't need as much. Of course, the district's not gonna lose them, the kids are gonna be still in the district and they'll be in different schools, but from our point of view, that's the other thing. The other thing also is that what I've tried to do is I've tried to retain my professional staff, and there will be a subtraction of instructional assistants at the middle school. We're gonna go down fairly significantly with instructional assistants, and that's so I can have a special education teacher in every cluster, and I won't need as much many instructional assistants if I have special education teachers co-teaching in those classes instead. And so it's one of those things, you know, it's a trade-off. And so those are the and to be honest, it's you know, we worked all together creating the budget. The needs of Watertown Middle School are a lot different next year, and it's just one of those years where we don't have as many kids and we don't have as many needy kids. And I think it's completely appropriate to be losing those positions.
Okay.
Okay.
That'd be the budget.
That'll be the budget, all right. Terrific presentation, this is fantastic. The level of detail, I think is so helpful. So thank you all very much. And I guess then we close this meeting
And move into a school
and move
committee.
into a school committee meeting. Aren't you lucky, those of you sitting over there?
Yeah.